The year was 1960. The world stood at the precipice of what would be known as the sexual revolution. The fundamental promise of this cultural upheaval was profoundly simple, yet radically destructive. We were told that freeing ourselves from the allegedly outdated, oppressive moral frameworks of the Bible would usher in a golden age of human happiness, relational freedom, and psychological liberation. Society declared that the biblical boundaries regarding sex were merely archaic tools of oppression, designed by primitive minds to restrict human joy and control the masses. Fast forward more than half a century, let us objectively examine the empirical evidence of this societal experiment. Has the secular promise of ultimate sexual liberation delivered the utopia it guaranteed? The statistics and psychological realities tell a vastly different, deeply tragic story. Instead of an era of unprecedented happiness, we are currently navigating through an epidemic of profound loneliness, clinical depression, relational fragmentation, and deep-seated emotional trauma. The modern world promised that if we simply removed God from our intimate lives, we would finally be free. Yet, the reality is that this so-called freedom has left millions feeling deeply enslaved, hollow, and chronically dissatisfied. To understand why the cultural paradigm has failed so spectacularly, and why the biblical framework has been proven absolutely correct, we must first dismantle a fundamental, modern misunderstanding. The secular narrative insists that sex is purely a biological function, a casual transaction of mutual consent, no more significant than sharing a meal or playing a sport. If it feels good, and no one is physically coerced, society argues there are no consequences. However, the Bible presents a radically different thesis, one that cuts through the superficiality of modern thought. The scriptures do not portray God as a cosmic killjoy who hates physical pleasure. On the contrary, the Bible recognizes sex as a profound, immensely powerful, and sacred gift. Because it is so powerful, it possesses the capacity to either deeply bond or profoundly break a human being. Consider the staggering claim made by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 6:18. He writes, "Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body." For centuries, secular critics mocked this specific verse. They argued it was logically flawed. How could a consensual physical act be a sin against one's own body? Surely, substance abuse or physical gluttony causes more direct bodily harm, but the biblical text operates on a much deeper anatomical, psychological, and spiritual reality than the critics ever comprehended. The original Greek text uses the word porneia to describe sexual immorality, which encompasses any sexual distortion outside the design of the marital covenant. Paul is not merely talking about physical disease. He is making a profound theological and psychological diagnosis. He is stating that sexual intimacy is not just an external action, it is an internal fusing of identity. When you engage in sexual immorality, you are fundamentally fracturing your own soul. In the modern hookup culture, human bodies are frequently reduced to commodities. We live in an era where physical intimacy is traded for momentary validation. People give away the most sacred, vulnerable parts of themselves to individuals to whom they have zero lifelong commitment. This creates a devastating cycle. You engage, you detach, you walk away. But the human soul was never designed for this level of casual fragmentation. You cannot continually give pieces of your core identity away without eventually feeling entirely empty. The pain of the modern dating scene, the deep trust issues, the inability to maintain long-term commitments, these are not random psychological anomalies. They are the direct, predictable consequences of violating the manufacturer's design. The Bible warned us about this brokenness thousands of years before modern psychology even had a vocabulary for it. God's laws were never meant to keep you from experiencing joy. His laws were designed to protect your heart from the profound devastation of temporary, uncommitted intimacy. The secular world looks at biblical boundaries and sees a prison. But let us shift our perspective entirely. Imagine purchasing a highly sophisticated, incredibly expensive piece of advanced technology. The manufacturer provides a detailed manual with strict operational parameters. Are those warnings designed to ruin your enjoyment? Or are they there to prevent you from completely destroying the machine? The biblical sexual ethic is not an arbitrary restriction on human love. It is the ultimate, uncompromising protection of it. In the biblical framework, sex is not a casual handshake. It is the physical culmination of a spiritual, emotional, and legal covenant. It demands the ultimate vulnerability, which in turn requires the ultimate security, a lifelong, exclusive, unconditional marital commitment. The modern world preaches the gospel of safe sex, focusing entirely on avoiding physical disease or unplanned pregnancies. But society offers absolutely zero protection for the human heart. There is no synthetic barrier that can protect your soul from the devastating trauma of being used, discarded, and replaced. But here is where the absolute shock comes in. You do not just have to take ancient theology's word for it. Let us look directly at 21st century neuroscience. When two people engage in sexual intimacy, the human brain releases a massive flood of powerful neurochemicals, most notably oxytocin and vasopressin. Scientists literally refer to oxytocin as the bonding hormone, or the biological superglue of human connection. It is designed by the Creator to produce profound pair bonding, a permanent neurological attachment that transcends mere physical sensation. When the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 24, stated thousands of years ago that a man and a woman shall become one flesh, the biblical writers were not just speaking in beautiful, poetic metaphors. They were stating an objective, indisputable biological and neurological fact. You are literally bonding your neural pathways to another human being. So, what happens in a culture of casual hookups and temporary flings? When you repeatedly trigger this powerful bonding chemical with multiple different partners, and then continuously sever those ties, you are functionally ripping off a piece of heavy-duty adhesive tape over and over again. With each new partner, with each subsequent break, the tape loses a little more of its stickiness. Modern neurologists and clinical psychologists are now documenting an absolute epidemic of young adults whose neurological pair bonding mechanisms have been severely compromised. They find it incredibly difficult to form lasting, trusting, deeply connected marriages. Why? Because their brains have been systematically trained to associate extreme physical intimacy with temporary, disposable, and ultimately unsafe relationships. Science is now desperately trying to medicate and therapize a psychological crisis that simple obedience to the biblical design would have prevented entirely. The Bible has been proven right not just historically, not just morally, but on a deep physiological level. God's boundaries are the only things keeping us from psychological self-destruction. Perhaps you are listening to this right now and you feel a profound, crushing sense of regret. Perhaps you have bought into the cultural lie and you are currently carrying the heavy, silent burden of sexual brokenness, betrayal, or addiction. Hear this clearly. The beauty of the Christian gospel is that it never ends with condemnation. It always ends with the offer of radical redemption. The world will use your body and discard your soul, but Jesus Christ offers complete restoration. You are not defined by your past relationships, your darkest mistakes, or your deepest traumas. The grace of God and the blood of Christ have the power to wash away every stain, to renew your mind, and to heal your most shattered relational wounds. God is the master restorer, and He can make you whole again. The Bible is not an outdated artifact from a primitive, unenlightened era. It is the most accurate, scientifically sound, and psychologically profound manual for human flourishing that has ever existed. The boundaries it sets are not the heavy chains of a cruel tyrant. They are the protective, unyielding walls built by a fiercely loving Father. It is time we stop apologizing for the biblical sexual ethic and start recognizing it for what it truly is, the absolute truth. Thank you so much for watching and seeking the truth with us today. If this message challenged your perspective or brought you clarity, do not forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video. May God bless you and guide you in His perfect truth.